Building Self-Compassion and Quieting Your Inner Critic. Chapter 1. Introduction to Self-Compassion. Have you ever found it easier to be kind to a friend than to yourself? If so, you're not alone. Many of us live with an internal dialogue that's far harsher than we would ever use with someone we care about. That voice, that inner critic, can hold us back, drain our confidence, and leave us feeling like we're never quite good enough. But there's another voice inside you, one that's capable of warmth, patience, and understanding. This is the voice of self-compassion. Self-compassion is the practice of turning the same care and concern we show others inward. It's not about making excuses or avoiding responsibility. And it's not the same as self-esteem, which often relies on being better than others to feel good about ourselves. Self-compassion, instead, is rooted in accepting ourselves as we are, imperfect, evolving, and worthy of kindness. Some people worry that being self-compassionate will make them lazy, selfish, or weak. But research shows the opposite is true. Self-compassion strengthens resilience, promotes motivation, and helps us recover more quickly from setbacks. It reduces anxiety and depression, improves our relationships, and leads to greater overall well-being. When we treat ourselves with compassion, we're not giving up. We're building up. In this audiobook, we'll explore what it means to develop a more supportive inner voice and how to quiet the destructive influence of the inner critic. That critic may sound familiar. It's the voice that says you should be doing more, that you're not smart enough, attractive enough, strong enough. It thrives on perfectionism, fear, and shame. But it's not your truth. It's a habit. And like any habit, it can be changed. You don't have to wait for some future version of yourself to be worthy of kindness. You can start right here, right now. As we continue, you'll learn practical tools and insights to help you build a new kind of relationship with yourself, one that's grounded in compassion, understanding, and real emotional strength. Let's begin. Chapter 2. Understanding the inner critic. Before we can change the way we relate to ourselves, we first need to understand the force we're up against, the inner critic. This voice, often harsh and relentless, doesn't come from nowhere. It has roots, deep ones, and when we start to trace its origin, we can begin to loosen its grip. The inner critic is often born in childhood. Maybe you grew up in an environment where love felt conditional, where being good meant being accepted and making mistakes meant being shamed. You might have internalized the voices of parents, teachers, or authority figures who, even with good intentions, used criticism as a motivator. Over time, those external messages became internal ones. Eventually, you no longer needed anyone else to criticize you. You did it yourself. Perfectionism is another common source. In a world that often rewards high achievement, it's easy to believe that anything less than perfect is failure. The inner critic thrives here, whispering that you're never enough, no matter how much you accomplish. It convinces you that your worth is tied to your productivity, appearance, or approval from others. And even when you succeed, it moves the goalposts, so the bar is always just out of reach. Society also plays a powerful role. We live in a culture saturated with comparisons. Social media, advertising, and even well-meaning advice can subtly, and not so subtly, suggest that we should be richer, happier, thinner, more accomplished. This constant exposure to idealized versions of life fuels the critic, reinforcing the idea that who we are just doesn't measure up. The inner critic doesn't always speak loudly. Sometimes it's subtle. It can show up as self-doubt, questioning your decisions, your abilities, your worth. It can take the form of shame, telling you that you're flawed at the core, that you're unlovable or broken. It might manifest as jealousy, guilt, or even procrastination, hiding behind perfectionist tendencies that keep you frozen in place. Left unchecked, the inner critic affects more than just our mood. It influences the way we think, behave, and relate to others. It can sabotage relationships, drain our energy, and lead to chronic stress, anxiety, or depression. It tells us not to try new things because we might fail. It convinces us that our dreams are unrealistic, that we're too late, too unworthy, too flawed. But here's the truth. The inner critic is not your enemy. It's a misguided protector. At its core, it wants to keep you safe. Safe from rejection, safe from disappointment, safe from failure. But it goes about it the wrong way. And what once may have been a coping mechanism has now become a barrier to your growth and happiness. By understanding the origins and tactics of the inner critic, you gain the power to change your relationship with it. You can start to recognize its voice for what it is, a pattern, not a fact. And with that awareness, you open the door to a new, more compassionate way of being. In the next chapter, we'll explore the science behind self-compassion and why it's such a powerful antidote to the critical voice within. Chapter 3. The science behind self-compassion. While self-compassion might sound like a gentle idea rooted in philosophy or spirituality, it's also grounded in science. Over the past 2 decades, researchers have been uncovering just how powerful self-compassion can be for our mental, emotional, and even physical health. One of the leading voices in this field is Dr. Kristin Neff, a pioneering researcher and author who has spent much of her career studying the impact of self-compassion. Through her work, she has shown that people who practice self-compassion are more resilient, more emotionally balanced, and less likely to experience anxiety and depression. Her research breaks self-compassion into 3 key components: self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness, concepts we'll explore more deeply later in this audiobook. So, what happens in the brain and body when we treat ourselves with compassion? Let's start with stress. When we face challenges or criticism, especially self-inflicted criticism, our bodies activate the fight or flight response. This stress reaction floods us with cortisol, a hormone meant to protect us in short bursts but harmful when constantly elevated. Over time, chronic stress can lead to inflammation, fatigue, and serious health issues. But when we respond to ourselves with compassion, we activate a different system, the care system. This system releases oxytocin and endorphins, calming the nervous system and helping us feel safe, connected, and soothed. In other words, self-compassion doesn't just make us feel better emotionally, it has real, measurable effects on our physiology. Psychologically, the benefits are equally profound. Self-compassion helps us bounce back from setbacks faster. It lowers levels of self-criticism and increases motivation, not through fear, but through encouragement. People often assume that self-compassion will make them complacent, but the opposite is true. Studies show that self-compassionate individuals are more likely to take responsibility for mistakes, learn from them, and try again. They're not paralyzed by failure because they're not tying their entire worth to their performance. Another powerful benefit of self-compassion is enhanced emotional regulation. When we're able to acknowledge our pain without being overwhelmed by it, we become more grounded and centered. Mindfulness, a key element of self-compassion, allows us to notice what we're feeling without judgment. This awareness helps prevent emotional spirals and gives us space to respond rather than react. Self-compassion also supports healthier relationships. When we are less judgmental of ourselves, we're less likely to be judgmental of others. We become more empathetic, more patient, and more emotionally available. And perhaps most importantly, self-compassion helps us feel connected to the broader human experience. Instead of feeling isolated by our struggles, we begin to understand that suffering is part of being human, and that we're not alone. The science is clear. Self-compassion is not self-pity, self-indulgence, or weakness. It's a powerful, evidence-based tool that improves our lives on every level. When we shift from self-criticism to self-kindness, we don't lower the bar, we lift the burden. And from that place of compassion, growth becomes not just possible, but sustainable. In the next chapter, we'll dive deeper into the core elements of self-compassion and how they work together to transform the way we see and treat ourselves. Chapter 4. Core Elements of Self-Compassion. At the heart of self-compassion are 3 core elements that work together to form a powerful inner foundation: mindfulness, common humanity, and self-kindness. These are not abstract ideas, they're practical tools you can begin using right away. When you understand and apply them, you change not only how you feel in the moment, but how you relate to yourself over time. Let's begin with mindfulness. Mindfulness means being present with what is, without judgment, without resistance. In the context of self-compassion, it means noticing your own suffering, your pain, your self-criticism, your disappointment, without becoming swept away by it. You're not ignoring it, and you're not exaggerating it either. You're simply acknowledging, this is hard. I'm struggling right now. Imagine you're caught in a storm. Without mindfulness, you might feel as though you are the storm, chaotic, swirling, out of control. But with mindfulness, it's as if you can step under a shelter and say, it's raining. You're still aware of the discomfort, but you're not consumed by it. This awareness creates space to respond rather than react, space to choose compassion instead of self-judgment. Next is common humanity. One of the most painful aspects of struggle is the sense that we're alone in it, that everyone else is doing just fine while we're falling apart. But the truth is, suffering is part of the shared human experience. Everyone has felt inadequate. Everyone has made mistakes. Everyone has failed, doubted, or felt ashamed at some point. Common humanity is the practice of remembering this truth. When you feel like you've failed, you can say to yourself, this is part of being human. Others feel this too. Instead of isolating yourself in shame, you connect with others through your shared vulnerability. It's not a weakness. It's a reminder that you belong. Think of it this way. If you were climbing a steep mountain and struggling to catch your breath, it would help to know that the people around you are also feeling the strain. You're not the only one. It's just a tough climb. And that knowledge helps you feel less defeated and more capable of continuing the journey. Finally, we come to self-kindness. This is the part that many people find most challenging, especially if they've spent years motivating themselves through criticism. But self-kindness is not about letting yourself off the hook. It's about treating yourself the way you would treat a close friend in a moment of pain. If your friend came to you feeling embarrassed about a mistake or overwhelmed by a bad day, you wouldn't say you're pathetic. You always mess up. Of course not. You'd offer comfort, encouragement, maybe even a warm hug. Self-kindness is offering that same care inward, saying things like, I know this hurts. You're doing the best you can. I'm here for you. Imagine you're carrying a heavy backpack up a hill. The inner critic adds more weight, stones of blame, shame, and judgment. Self-kindness, on the other hand, helps you pause, adjust the straps, and maybe even take a moment to rest. It doesn't erase the hill, but it makes the climb more manageable, and it reminds you that you don't have to suffer alone. Together, these three elements, mindfulness, common humanity, and self-kindness, form a complete practice of self-compassion. They're not separate steps you have to master in order. They're interwoven, often arising together when you turn toward yourself with care. As we move forward, keep these elements in mind. You don't need to get them perfect. The goal is not to become the most self-compassionate person overnight. The goal is simply to begin noticing, recognizing, and responding to yourself in a new way, one rooted in understanding rather than criticism. In the next chapter, we'll explore practical techniques you can use in your daily life to begin building this self-compassionate foundation. Chapter 5. Practical techniques to build self-compassion. Self-compassion isn't just a concept to understand, it's a practice to embody. And like any skill, it gets stronger the more you use it. In this chapter, we'll explore several practical tools you can begin using right away to build your self-compassion muscle. These exercises are simple, flexible, and can be tailored to your own needs and personality. You don't need to be perfect, you just need to begin. Let's start with a core practice, the self-compassion break. This is a short, guided internal dialogue you can use anytime you're feeling overwhelmed, ashamed, anxious, or in pain. You pause, breathe, and say 3 things to yourself, either silently or aloud. 1. This is a moment of suffering. This is mindfulness. You're acknowledging what's happening without denying it or making it bigger than it is. 2. Suffering is a part of life. This is common humanity. You remind yourself that you're not alone. Many people experience what you're feeling right now. 3. May I be kind to myself in this moment. This is self-kindness. You offer yourself care, warmth, and patience, just as you would to someone you love. You can personalize this break with language that feels natural to you, such as, I'm doing the best I can, or it's okay to feel this way. This short pause can shift your entire emotional landscape and create space for healing. Next, let's talk about writing exercises. Writing allows us to slow down and reflect. One of the most powerful exercises is writing a letter to yourself from a compassionate perspective. Imagine that someone who knows and loves you unconditionally is writing to you about something you're struggling with. What would they say? What would they remind you of? How would they comfort you? As you write, keep that warm, supportive tone. When you read it back, you'll be surprised by how much clarity and comfort it can bring. It may feel awkward at first, but with practice, it becomes more natural. Another useful technique is reframing harsh thoughts. Start by writing down a self-critical thought you often have. For example, I always mess things up. Then challenge it. Is it really true? Is it helpful? Finally, rewrite it in a self-compassionate way. I made a mistake, but I'm learning. I'm human and I'm growing. Reframing helps you move from judgment to understanding. Let's move now to the body. Our emotional state is deeply connected to our physical experience. Sometimes, a soothing touch is more effective than words. Placing your hand gently over your heart or giving yourself a hug can activate your body's caregiving system and help you feel supported. It might sound simple, but these gestures send a powerful signal to your nervous system. You're safe. You're cared for. Breathwork is another body-based practice that supports self-compassion. Try this. Breathe in slowly through your nose to a count of 4, hold for 4, and exhale gently for 6. As you exhale, imagine letting go of tension and welcoming in softness. Pair this with a quiet phrase like, inhale peace, exhale judgment. Just a few rounds of conscious breathing can ground you and reconnect you with the present moment. Finally, one of the most transformative tools is creating a compassionate inner voice. Many of us have a well-developed inner critic, but a barely audible inner nurturer. It's time to change that. Start by noticing the tone you use when you talk to yourself. Would you speak that way to a friend, a child, or someone you love? Now, imagine your compassionate voice as a character or presence, someone warm, wise, and kind. Maybe it's based on someone you admire, a beloved grandparent, or even your future self. When you're struggling, call on this voice. Ask, what would my compassionate self say right now? Then listen. You can also practice using this voice in everyday situations, not just during crises. Celebrate small wins. Remind yourself that you're doing your best. Say, I'm proud of you. Or, that was hard, and you handled it with grace. Over time, this voice becomes stronger. It begins to show up on its own. And the more you listen to it, the more natural it becomes to treat yourself with the kindness and respect you deserve. Self-compassion is not about removing all pain. It's about changing how you relate to pain. These practices help you meet difficult moments with gentleness rather than criticism. They help you build an inner world that supports healing, growth, and resilience. In the next chapter, we'll turn our attention to the inner critic itself and learn how to quiet its voice so that your compassionate self can take the lead. Chapter 6. Silencing the inner critic. The inner critic can feel like a relentless voice inside your head, judging, comparing, doubting. It's a voice that says you're not good enough, smart enough, or worthy enough. But here's the truth. That voice is not you. It's a mental habit, built over time, that can be unlearned. And in this chapter, we'll explore how. Let's begin with cognitive techniques, simple but powerful ways to challenge and change your inner dialogue. Start by listening closely to what your inner critic says. Write it down. Be specific. You might notice thoughts like, I always mess things up, or I'll never be successful. Now ask yourself, is this thought 100% true? Is there evidence that contradicts it? Often you'll find that the critic's voice is based on fear, not fact. Then, replace that distorted thought with something grounded and kind. For example, I made a mistake, but I'm learning. I don't need to be perfect to be valuable. This shift doesn't mean ignoring problems. It means approaching them with clarity and compassion, not cruelty. Now let's talk about mindset shifts. One of the most effective ways to quiet the inner critic is to stop measuring yourself by perfection and start valuing growth. Perfection is a moving target. No matter how hard you try, it always stays just out of reach. But a growth mindset, the belief that skills and qualities can be developed through effort, frees you from that trap. It reframes mistakes as learning opportunities rather than failures. When you embrace growth over perfection, you stop asking, "Am I good enough?" and start asking, "What can I learn from this?" That one change in perspective can silence the critic before it even starts. Visualization is another powerful technique. Close your eyes and imagine your inner critic as a character, maybe a stern voice, a disapproving figure, or a shadowy presence. Notice how it looks, sounds, and feels. Now, visualize your compassionate self, warm, wise, and supportive. What does that version of you look like? What's their tone, their energy? Picture the two side by side. Who would you rather listen to? When the critic speaks up, imagine gently turning down its volume and turning up the voice of compassion. This simple practice builds awareness and gives you more choice in how you respond to your thoughts. Finally, let's talk about setting boundaries, not just with others, but within yourself. It's okay to say, "I'm not entertaining that thought right now." Just like you would avoid spending time with someone who constantly tears you down, you can choose not to engage with your inner critic's negativity. You can also protect your mental space from external sources of criticism, social media, toxic relationships, environments that amplify self-doubt. Boundaries aren't walls, they're acts of self-respect. They say, "I deserve peace. I deserve kindness. I deserve to feel safe in my own mind." Silencing the inner critic doesn't mean it disappears forever, but over time it becomes quieter, weaker, and less convincing. And when it does speak up, you'll be ready, not with fear, but with strength, awareness, and compassion. In our final chapter, we'll wrap up everything we've covered and offer practical ways to integrate self-compassion into your daily life, so that the journey you've started here becomes part of who you are. Chapter 7, Final Thoughts and Daily Integration. You've just taken an important step toward building a more compassionate relationship with yourself, one rooted in understanding, not judgment. As we close, let's take a moment to reflect on what you've learned and how you can continue this journey every single day. We began by understanding what self-compassion truly is, the ability to treat yourself with the same kindness and care you would offer to someone you deeply love. It's not indulgence, it's not weakness, it's strength, the kind that sustains you when life gets hard. We explored the origins of the inner critic and how it develops through childhood experiences, perfectionist tendencies, and societal pressure. We recognize that this voice is not your truth. It's a conditioned pattern that can be challenged and transformed. You learned that self-compassion has real, measurable benefits. Backed by science, it improves emotional regulation, reduces stress, and increases motivation. It helps you recover from failure, connect with others, and live with more peace and authenticity. We explored the three core elements: mindfulness, to observe your pain without becoming consumed by it; common humanity, to remind you that you are never alone in your struggles; and self-kindness, to offer yourself warmth instead of judgment. And we looked at practical tools, self-compassion breaks, writing exercises, soothing physical gestures, breath work, and creating a supportive inner voice. These aren't just techniques, they're lifelines you can return to day after day. So how do you keep this practice alive? The key is small daily rituals. Start your morning with a compassionate intention. Today I will speak to myself with kindness. When stress arises, pause for a moment and take a breath. If you catch the inner critic flaring up, gently ask, what would my compassionate self say right now? Keep a journal. Write notes to yourself like you would to a friend. Place a reminder on your mirror, your phone, or your workspace. Something that says, I'm worthy of love. I'm doing my best. Some days will be easier than others. That's okay. Self-compassion is not about being perfect. It's about showing up, over and over again. This is a lifelong, gentle journey. There's no finish line, no test to pass. Just a continued practice of showing up for yourself, especially when it's hardest to do so. And with each act of compassion, you build an inner home that feels safe, accepting, and strong. Let's end with a short affirmation. You may say this aloud or silently in your heart. I am learning to treat myself with kindness. I am allowed to be a work in progress. I honor my struggles and I meet them with patience and care. I am not alone. I am enough. Take a deep breath in and gently release. Thank you for being here, for choosing this journey, and for remembering that you are worthy of the love and compassion you so freely offer to others. Thank you for listening.